So hello and welcome to this episode of Our Longevity Futures. I'm your host, Chris Curwen, and today I am delighted to be joined by Casper Slots, the CCO and founder of Ossiform. So thank you so much for joining me, Casper.
Thank you very much for having me.
So I think perhaps before we actually get talking about Ossiform and the work that you do there, could you just give me a brief introduction as to your background and how you actually got into the area?
Yeah, so it all started as a university spin-out. It was me and the co-founder Martin who were actually doing our bachelor thesis. And during this, we were in contact with the university hospital. It was the maxillofacial reconstruction department. And we saw how difficult it was to reconstruct some of these patients and what they left with. So a lot of the patients were happy that they survived the accident, but a lot of them has lost something. When they can't recognize themselves in the mirror, they lose a part of their identity. So the project was to find other ways of reconstructing people that were missing, primarily bone in the facial region. And here we came up with a solution to 3D print a bone mineral. And we actually started a company upon that technology. So this is the main goal of Ossiform, is to help with the reconstruction or augmenting of bone in patients.
And do you remember the time when you thought, you know what, we could actually make this into a really viable business here? Was there a one moment, or was it a sort of gradual gathering of information and then it sort of like...
Yeah, so it was, we were just happy to write a good bachelor thesis. Mm-hmm. Then the university wants to patent the technology, and we were of course excited for that. Yeah, but we didn't really think that it would lead anywhere, because I mean the invention is pretty simple, and for you to have a patent, no one has to have written anything about it or have done similar things. And as it was so simple, we thought it wouldn't be feasible to get the patent. But down the line, we got the patent, and yeah, well, we finished our studies in 2017, and we're more or less left with who should take it further. And it was just left to Martin and me to start the company and find funding. So we spent a year trying to find funding for the company, and then we actually started, and that was more or less the exact moment where you were sitting there in an office, and you had some money in the bank, and you had a actual company you need to run.
I bet, yeah, that's quite a journey, going from a undergraduate thesis to actually forming a company out of it. That's pretty impressive stuff. So do you want to tell us a little bit more about what Ossiform do now?
Yeah, so at the moment we have built our own production site. So we have 3D printing capabilities, and we can produce it in a sterile environment, so that's in a clean room. And we have a quality assurance system that, ensures that we don't make implants that don't measure up to our standards. And what we're using all that for is actually to build up data and get a market approval for from the FDA, the US market. So here we need to go through the regulatory authorities. They have, of course, a lot of concerns about new products that go onto the market. Are they safe enough? Are they relevant? And that's everything we need to prove that we have fully control of our process, and it is in fact a safe product to use.
And with so many of these startups, they're trying to solve a problem, and you touched on it a moment ago. But what is the problem that Ossiform are trying to solve, and why is it a problem?
Yeah, so the way we are actually reconstructing bone at the moment is that we are using what I would call off-the-shelf products. So this is standardized sizes and shapes that are being mass produced, but they're not taking the individual into account. I mean, it's not a perfect fit. Often it's a horrible fit, but the surgeon have to make it fit. So you will fit the implant, not the other way around. And that is what
terribly invasive form of actually doing these sort of surgeries. If you're making the patient fit to the actual the implant.
Yeah, but it's it's the way the surgeons have been working for a very, very long time, and it's because this is what they had access to. So you need to change a way of thinking and thinking, well, if we want shoe sizes to fit us correctly, then why not implants to fit us correctly? And that's not the whole problem. And the other side is that we're actually producing all these implants in materials that the body is not familiar with. So we're producing in metals or in plastics. They are not degradable. They will stay in the body forever. There will always be a risk of rejection from the body, and it also leads to higher infection rates. So what we've come up with is a implant that is specifically built for the patient, takes into account all the individuals that have certain shapes or sizes, and it's a natural mineral, bone mineral, so the body will recognize it. It will actually, there will be a turnover period, but once that period is over, you won't be able to see if there is implant left anymore. It will be the patient's own bone.
Amazing. And who is it that usually actually comes to you wanting these sort of implants?
Yeah, so unfortunately, we have a lot of communication trying to create awareness of the company. Mm-hmm. And we are hitting a lot of patients that are in some tragic state where reconstruction has failed a couple of times and they can't really get any other solution, and they're hoping that we will be the right one for them. Unfortunately, we are not on the market, so we can't really offer them anything. But this is patient both in hands, feet, arms and legs, and also, as I mentioned, in the facial area where the reconstruction simply hasn't been beneficial enough or is too complicated for the surgeon to fix with what means he has access to.
And is this something that, well, hopefully in the future will be available to people of all age groups? Or obviously with children, it's slightly different because they're still developing, their bones are still changing shape. Do the ossiform bones, can they change shape as a person grows, or is that a feature that maybe will come in the future?
Yeah, so of course I don't have data on it because the implants hasn't been in children, but theoretically our turnover time is about 6 months, depending on the size of the implant and the porosity of the implant. But it should, in theory, be suitable for children in the growing ages. So we are looking into, for example, kids that are born with deformities, where we could help them correct it in an early age, and the implant would grow with them. What we see is that if the kid or child needs some reconstructive surgery, they will need it every time they grow, because you will put a titanium implant in, and it just don't expand in the same rate.
And so when in the future, when you're, hopefully these are commercially viable, and someone comes to you with looking to get an implant, do you want to just take us through the process of them coming to you through to the actual, I guess it's some sort of scan that you do to have a look at their bone structure and decide what sort of shape you make it, and then all the way through to actually getting the implant into their body?
Yeah, so we would usually be contacted by a surgeon or hospital that has a patient who needs any type of reconstruction or augmentation. What they will usually do is they will have a CT scan or MRI scan of the patient. The scanning data will be sent to us. We will then convert it into a 3D model. And from that, we can use a CAD program to draw what implant the surgeon would need or would prefer. So this would be a dialogue with the surgeon. We need him to have the best tool he wants for the given surgery. Once we have agreed upon the design of the implant, then it will go down to our production. So here we mix the bone mineral with a fatty acid. We put it into a syringe, which is connected to a 3D printer, and it's what is more or less extrusion-based printing. So we build layer upon layer, and then we will have the implant ready. The good thing about our method is that the fatty acid we use, this is the binder for the powder. We can burn it off. So we burn it off in an oven after that, and it's completely left with a pure tricalcium phosphate implant. Now, when we are able to design an implant that fits for the patient, we can also design it for optimized reabsorption or regeneration. So a lot of our bones are not solid. They have a harder outer shell and then a mesh-like inner shell. A lot of the implants on the market doesn't really or aren't really concerned with that, but we will optimize the implant also for this.
Yeah, that's something I want to come on to, because I think it's such an interesting feature of what you guys do, and has so many possibilities. But coming back to the actual the structure of the bone, how does it differ from an actual normal bone in a human? You mentioned the structure there. Is it strength-wise? Is it very much comparable? Is it stronger? Is it not as strong?
Yeah. So it's not bone in any means. Our own bones is a beautiful design by nature. It's possessed of blood vessels, collagen, has living cells in it. So ours is what we would call a ceramic, but it's a material that the bone cells recognize. So all of us have bone cells that are a day of work is to tear down old bone and build up new bone. And once we implanted our material, it will just see it as old bone that needs to be tore down and built up again. The only thing is that if you have some reconstruction done, the size of what the cells can do themselves is not always feasible. So we just give them the material to reconstruct it themselves. So we are actually using the power of your own healing capabilities.
And how would you get around the issue of rejection in the body? Because obviously with other organs, it is a big issue. Do you have the same sort of limitations with bone and with implants, or is it slightly different?
No, so when you're using foreign materials like polymers and metals, your own cells will see this as a foreign material. It will always try to reject it. Now, there are materials that are better suitable for it than others, but there will always be some percentage of rejection, and this will be in your whole lifetime. So maybe the first 5 years is fine with a titanium implant, but the next year it would fail. The good thing about ours is that it's a natural material, so it's recognized by your own cells. 70% of real bone consists of this tricalcium phosphate, and then it's degradable. So if the turnover time is around 6 months, well, after 6 months there won't be any risk of rejection, because it would be your own living bone you're left with. So you won't have any rejection. Now, one of the other complications is often infections. And when you're using a plastic or a metal, it's more or less a solid material that the immune system can work with. So because ours is highly porous, the immune system has almost access to the whole implant at almost at once. So you are better off fighting whatever infection you might get during surgery, because there's when you're implanting something, no matter what material you're using, there are always a risk of infection.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. And what's the sort of the timeline between actually someone coming to see you and them having a successful implant?
Yeah, so it depends across a lot of the hospital. After we produced it, we'll ship the implant to them. I mean, we can produce an implant in a day, depending on the complexity. It's more the bottleneck of our procedure is more this digital design that we need to agree upon with the surgeon. Because there can be a lot of optimization and what specifically they want and what is actually feasible to print.
Yeah, I can imagine the communication with the surgeons and that relationship is just so key to what you're doing. You said that was one of the main bottlenecks. Is there any other real challenges that you've come across that you've had to overcome in this process? I'm sure there are many, but are there any that stick out in your mind that still cause friction at the moment?
I mean, it's a proprietary bioink that we've developed here. So no printer was built for this. No FDA clearance have ever been used for this. No production have ever been set up for this. So we're always doing things our own way and a new way, and we need to figure out the right way. So it's not impossible, but it just takes some time to figure out how is the best fit for our specific material in a production setup. And the beautiful thing is that it's what we've come up with is quite a simple production. So it's we don't need any nasty chemicals or anything like that. We can actually have a very clean and effective and small production setup.
So are you able to actually license the machinery that you're making as well? And is part
we're not making the machinery. We are buying printers from developing companies that already have that. The only thing is that they haven't tested our material in their printer, so we need to optimize it, of course. But our plan is that we have built our own production. We call it a pilot production because it's more just to showcase the FDA that this is possible. Then we could actually license off the package. So we can say if you buy this setup, then you can produce implant.
Mm-hmm. And as I mentioned before, the bones or the implants that you are creating aren't like ordinary bones for some very obvious reasons. But can you also tell me about how they almost boast a range of extra functions? You mentioned that they're porous and they might actually be able to hold things like growth factors and things in there to be released. So do you want to just talk me through the extra functions that your implants actually boast?
Yeah, so this is more in our pipeline development. I mentioned that we combine the bone mineral with the fatty acid, which allowed us to print the implant, and then we actually burn off the fatty acid. Now, this is a way to get a clean product, and it's an easier way to get through the regulatory authorities and get to the market. But if we don't burn off the fatty acids have been used very long time to store pharmaceuticals. I suspect most of the vaccines we're getting right now also have some fatty acid in to encapsulate some of the RNA or whatever they're using. We can do the exact same thing. So we can encapsulate different pharmaceuticals, that being a growth factor like BMB2 or a antibiotic, and it will actually be, because it is during the printing, it is in the fatty acid the whole way, so it will be through the implant. It will be the whole implant that is actually infused with the pharmaceutical. When you look at implants today, when they are supposed to be drug diluting or anything like that, they're using polymers often, and they have a very large surface area that is covered with whatever pharmaceutical you want. So you have a very, very high burst release, which means that you will lose about 80% of the pharmaceuticals during a day or two, and then you're left with almost nothing. Now, once we have infused the whole implant, it's actually the body's own cells that need to access the pharmaceutical, so it will just take longer time. So we have a release date that is 14 days plus, and it's something what we're working on right now to see if we can use growth stimulants in a more controlled manner than a high burst release, or for example antibiotics, that you can have a longer lifetime for a use case for this.
Amazing. And I guess the range of conditions that this can help with is, almost limited by the things that you can actually infuse the bone with. Is that right?
I mean, the pharmaceutical has to survive the production phase. So it needs to be in contact with a fatty acid. It needs to we are applying heat in the printer, so also needs to survive the heat for printing. So there are some pharmaceuticals that are just too fragile to survive the production, but this is some of the development phases we're looking into.
And one of the questions from my colleague, Avi Roy, is how do you validate your P3D scaffolds, which is, I believe, one of your new products, as an effective preclinical trial method? I.e., can it be used for official preclinical trial filing for the FDA trials?
Yeah, so this is quite a difficult question. The P3D scaffolds is not a bone implant for patients. It's a research product where, when we were at the university and we want to validate the technology, we use these scaffolds to have cell studies on them, see if they were toxic, use them in mice trials to see if it actually had a turnover rate. And we just thought that a lot of the scientific work that goes into the research in bone, both bone diseases like cancer or something like that, could benefit of a scaffold that were more closer to what bone is actually like. So we are producing, again, precisely the same way and precisely the same material. And it ensures that the cells can now live in a 3D culture. So it's more natural environment than the 2D wells they are producing these research papers on. If you can use it for FDA clearance regarding drug discoveries or anything like that, it's not, I don't know, because we don't have data yet for it. And also need to discuss with the companies that are running these trials. So at the moment, we are running trials for getting FDA approval on our implant. And as a human implant is much larger than a test trial animal usually is, we need to produce implants that are smaller. So this data would actually benefit what could be a valid validation for the scaffolds further down the line, if you can use it for trials like this.
Yeah, Avi always does like asking the difficult questions. where about you mentioned the trials though, so whereabouts in the process are you, and how close are you getting in those trials to actually be getting FDA clearance and being able to bring it into commercial settings?
Yeah, so we expect to launch a product in the end of 2022, start 2023. So we are right now conducting all the necessary trials, implantation trials in test animals, bio and toxicity trials. So it's a lot of money and a lot of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a quick process by any means.
No.
But yeah, I mean, I wish you the best of luck in that, and we all know that these processes can take a long time. What do you actually believe is the future of this area? So we spoke a little bit about what you're working towards and what might come in the future. Do you ever think we'll get to the stage where healthy people might actually be inserting artificial bones into their bodies that are more functional? Or if we really think outside the box, where do you think we could be in sort of 10, 20, 50 years time?
I mean, there are so many companies that are pushing 3D printing in not only bone. Bone is maybe the lowest hanging fruit for this technology, but I suspect that we will see more solutions depending on what type of organs that would be beneficial to print. Maybe we'll see fully functional organs that actually can be produced artificially. But it's way down the line. So that's very exciting. For us, we are solely concerned with bone right now because we need to push the company forward. But we are looking at use cases other than just reconstruction. So as I mentioned, augmentation. This could be new noses, new cheek, new chin. If people needs to have some cosmetic work also. If they will, I don't see a reason why you would take a healthy bone out and replace it with a synthetic one in any case. Not at the moment, and not
More trouble than it's worth, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, very, very exciting stuff. And what are the next steps for you guys in the near future?
Yeah, well, getting approval, that would be the biggest hurdle for us. We are currently going for what is called more standardized product. So this is not a patient specific. Once we get approval for that, then we're looking on getting approval for the patient specific, which we are planning would be sometime in 2024.
Amazing, amazing. Well, yeah, I wish you all the best of luck in that. And is there anything else you want to talk about, or any question that you think I should have asked you during this interview that you'd like to just mention?
No, not really. I mean, for people who think this sounds very familiar, it's because we were formerly known as Particle 3D. We have now changed the name to Ossiform because it's more suitable for the business we're in. Particle 3D was a spur of the moment name we found we had when we were at the university and actually didn't know what the company should produce. The technology we patent is actually very broad, so you could use it for other industries also. But we had this goal in mind always to print bone, and now we've have very talented team at our company who found a name that we all can get behind, and yeah.
I think it suits everything you're about perfectly. And where can actually people find out more about you?
So we have our homepage, of course, and the marketing team is always working hard to push awareness of our company out on the social media. So Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. You won't see us dance on TikTok, but some relevant information you would find most of the other places. Yeah.
Well, I think everyone will be sad to hear they won't be able to do that. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me, Casper. Yeah, it's been absolutely amazing to talk to you and to hear what Ossiform has to offer and the steps you're taking in the near future. I wish you all the best of luck with it. And thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. And yeah, we'll be back with you very shortly with another episode. So thank you very much. Have a good day.